Okay, so we are moving on to the red commons and uncommons for the Edge of Eternities full draft breakdown. And we're going to go over the review system really quick, then the general archetypes and color pairs for red, and then we'll go card by card. And when we review the cards, we'll be using the Scuffle review system. That is my review system. A 1 is a card that you should never play. A 2 is a card you should do your best not to play. A 3 is replaceable. 4s are solid. 5s are strong. 6 is a card you will always play in a given color or deck. 7 is a card that pulls you into that deck. If you get past it, you can know that it's probably open. 8 is a card that you should do work to play, whether you'll splash it or change your deck around or add in some cards you might not play otherwise. 9 is a card that says you're going to be this color now, and a 10 is a card you will always play. So the number you see at the top is going to be the average, the most common rating that card will receive, but all cards will also have a floor value, that is the worst the card will be, a ceiling value, that is the best the card will be, and an amount of effort required to bridge that gap. And your job as a drafter or sealed deck player, or just player in general, is to bring all the cards up to the ceiling as much as possible, to raise the value of your deck and your cards with how you play and how you assemble your cards together. And this will help you draft your way. Magic is a complex game. Being able to play it the way you like to play is viable. You can do things your way and succeed. And hopefully my system will help you with that. So let's get started. All right, up first for red, white spacecraft. When they say spacecraft, they mean tapping things or untapping things. They mean having lots of bodies. The spacecraft themselves are just one way to utilize that. What you care about are payoffs, engines, things that build up value over time. So the first thing you need to look for when you're picking are your payoffs. They're going to be largely rares, but Sammy is a really good one. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. It's worth it to get Sammy going. You're not always going to be able to attack, so spacecraft, and there's a few other ways, are really good ways to make sure you have some tapped creatures. So you need your payoffs first. Sammy is a really good one, but there's a lot of good ones that are rares. Then you need your ability to grind, ways to stay alive, to generate value over time, and use that value to keep your opponent from reducing your life total to 0. Then you need your removal. There's a lot of good red and white removal, and you need to sort of assemble a suite of removal that can handle different things. Red has lots of very cheap removal. White has lots of removal that kills very expensive things, but slowly. And then finally, you need spacecraft themselves. It doesn't have to be literally spacecraft. Just ways to tap your creatures or turn those payoffs into value. There's a lot more ways to turn your payoffs into value than just the spacecraft. Spacecraft are the easiest way, and I like them. I like that red-white gets to utilize spacecraft well. There's enough board wipes in this set that you should think about what you will do after a board wipe pretty early. And what I mean by that is with Sammy, at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, create a tap 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. Once you make the second robot, you can just tap those 2 over and over again and keep generating robots. You might not want to play any more creatures so that if somebody wipes the whole board, you can rebuild quickly. It's a good idea to figure out if spacecraft are plan A or plan B. Like, are spacecraft just enabling things, or are you trying to win with a spacecraft? Are spacecraft letting your creatures get huge so that you can win with just those creatures? Are they letting you generate a lot of creatures and then you're using anthems? If spacecraft is plan A, then you are cheating. You're using warp more and cards that station aggressively to attack with the spacecraft in the air, because they're mostly large flyers. If you're not trying to win the spacecraft, then you're doing anthem things, you're doing other things, and you'll attack with the spacecraft after your opponent deals with it. Figure out whether you're using numbers or size to win. Like, are you using a lot of creatures or one large creature? And then if you are stationing your spacecraft, are you using time, meaning you're locking down the board and using all of your creatures to just eventually turn them into larger creatures? Or are you cheating with like warp cards? There's a few good ways to cheat spacecraft into becoming creatures. All right, for red and green together, That's red-green landfall. You need your payoffs first, things like Tannock, something that rewards you for using the landers. Then you need your landers. You want a lot of them. And then the bombs, the big creatures, they don't actually have to be red and green. If you're making a lot of landers, you can play an island in a blue bomb. You can play a swamp in a black bomb, as long as you are aware that you will not have those colors until pretty late in the game, turns 5, 6, 7 at the earliest. And then blockers. You need a lot of blockers in this deck, because landers take a lot of time to activate. You have to untap with them and then pay 2 mana. If you're not buying time with blockers that are above the rate of your opponent's blockers, you're not going to get to use the landers very often. You need fewer win cons in red-green, because you'll win eventually just from having cards in play. Pinging on each land is not a bad way to end the game, especially if you're attacking with red. All right, so we're skipping on to red, black, void, which is also known as sacrifice. You need your win conditions first. How are you winning the game? Then pieces of value. There's a lot of good ways for red, black to develop value. Ways, whether you're just drawing cards or recurring things with stuff like the Interceptor Mechan. Then you need fodder, things that you are comfortable and happy to sacrifice, and then your removal. There's so much removal available in black and red that you can pick it a little later, but you do need it. The good sacrifice outlets are pretty rare. The passable sacrifice outlets are plentiful. There's a lot of good ways to sacrifice one thing or sacrifice things when you attack. Most of the weak cards you can make strong in the right combinations or with the right cards. And black and red together have a few good plans. You can do the steal and sack thing, where you borrow a creature for a turn and then sacrifice it. You can build around spacecraft. You can be a mid-range deck, just focusing on flexibility. You can try and grind out a game with all the card draw you have available, or you can do an aristocrat style thing where you eat all of your creatures at once and they lose life and you gain life, or you're pinging them a lot. You can think of it kind of like a burn deck. We did cover the specific rarer aspect of each of these in black, but very briefly, for steal and sack, the threatens are the rare card. The spacecraft plan, the actual spacecraft are the rare card. For the mid-range game plan, the flexible cards are hard to find. So you want burn spells that can be aimed at the face. The grind plan, cards like Interceptor Mechan, the things that are just worth strict copies, strict numbers of cards, but also affect the board, are the rare plans. And for the aristocrats, the things that the repeatable sack outlets and the things that drain your opponent when they die are the harder to find pieces. And then finally, blue-red artifacts. So you need your payoffs first, the cards that want you to have lots of artifacts in play, like Menin, Earthros Exile. And then you need to figure out whether you're going tall or wide. If you're going tall, you need lots of cards like Menin, Earthros Exile, and then you need to keep it alive. So you need to be able to protect the one creature who you're putting all the counters on. Then you need your good artifacts, the things that you're happy to have, that can trip, that do a thing, or that are just regular cards that you want for limited deck, removal or creatures and bodies that are also artifacts. And then your other artifacts, the worst ones. You got to figure out whether you're going wide or protecting one threat pretty early, and then figure out how much removal you need. Like, if you're fast enough, you don't actually need much removal, because there's so much tempo. There's so many ways to tap a thing down, make a thing unblockable, pump a creature up, or just deal with it for long enough to kill your opponent. And then, are you gaining your value from casting spells, like actually drawing cards by paying 5 mana to draw 3 cards, or are you gathering inherent value from just the permanent types and playing things out, which is a slightly more aggressive plan? First red card is Bombard. 2 and a red for an instant. Bombard deals 4 damage to target creature. So it kills about 83% of the creatures in the set. It doesn't kill everything you needed to kill, and a lot of things pull out of range. So it's a solid removal spell, but it's not something that, like, I'm going way out of my way for, because 3 mana to kill not everything is tough. But overall, you need removal, you need a fair amount of it, and Bombard is a solid spell even if it doesn't have any real synergy or bonuses. So I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, low effort. Up next we have Cut Propulsion. Strictly better than Bombard most of the time. 2 and a red for an instant. Target creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. If that creature has flying, it deals twice that much damage to itself instead. That last line of text is mostly for flavor because they're falling, but overall it'll kill most things in this set. I didn't do an exact number, but I only found 6 creatures that were relevant that it didn't kill, and it kills the big ones. It doesn't kill the 5/7 with reach, but it kills enough that this is one of the better red removal spells. They gave red a removal spell that can just kill anything, and a lot of the larger ones are stations, and they do have flying. So I gave it a 5 with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, low effort. 3 mana, kill anything at instant speed is pretty good in this set. All right, our next card is Debris Field Crusher. 4 and a red for an artifact spacecraft. When this spacecraft enters, it deals 3 damage to any target station, and at 8+ counters it has flying, and 1 in a red, the spacecraft gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So this is a bad removal spell into a bad finisher, but red does want things tapped often enough that they'll play bad spacecraft, and it hits pretty hard. This is a very, very late game spacecraft, because even if you turbo it out, so a lot of the spacecraft, if you turbo station them, meaning we warp something huge or take a whole turn off to tap our board to station it, we get to hit pretty hard that turn. But that's not the case for the Debris Field Crusher. You still need to pour mana into it, but X mana get +X/+0 is a real finisher. It ends the game fast. Killing something at a loss of mana and then being a worse finisher together is worth it if you have creatures that you're actively wanting to station a spacecraft with, which red does. So I gave it a 4 overall with a floor of 3, a ceiling of 6, and medium effort. Cool card, not very strong. Okay, up next we have Drill Too Deep. 1 and a red for an instant. Choose 1. Put 5 charge counters on target spacecraft or planet you control, or destroy target artifact. The second ability is what we care about. There's 60 artifacts in the set. It's pretty nice being able to hit them. The first mode is like just okay. I would rather warp a 5-drop. However, you do get to block at instant speed. So this is the one way in the set to put charge counters on a spacecraft at instant speed. And if your opponent is attacking you, you get to surprise them with a block. That's a nice upside. It's not worth running it for that alone, but I like the option. It's only gonna be a ceiling of 5 when I have the option between destroying an artifact or charging up a spacecraft, but it's kind of weak overall. When I have the spacecraft, I'm happy to play the shatter, and I want access to 1 shatter, but I don't need to work too hard. But yeah, I just went ahead and lowered it to a 3. So Drill Too Deep is 3 average, floor of 3, ceiling of 5, medium effort. I have to have spacecraft and specific math. The thing about 5 counters is I can tap a 2-drop, a 2-mana 2/2, to do half of it. Like I can put it to 2 counters and then charge the last 5. And a lot of the artifacts have strong ETBs, so I'm not enthused by a plain shatter. Frontline War Rager. 2 and a red for a 2/3 Kavu Soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's solid if you have a spacecraft that comes down before it, and there aren't spacecraft that really come down before it. There is the 2-mana common one. If you can get this to trigger the turn it comes down, it's pretty good. A 3-cost 3/4, even if it comes in tapped, that grows is something I'm happy to play. But there's a world difference between a 3-cost 2/3 and a 3-cost 3/4. There's a 2-point difference. So it's difficult enough because you need 2 or more tapped creatures. So if you can play a 1-drop, 2-drop, attack with both of them, War Rager is very good. Or if you can play a 2-cost 1-drop, 2-cost station, and station 2-cost spacecraft station with both of them, then it's pretty good. But that's hard. Things have to be going really well for that to happen. So overall, I gave it a 3 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5, but high effort. It's some work. There, you can do a dedicated spacecraft deck. That'll be a lot of fun. And if it starts growing on turn 4, it's okay, but it's just okay. This is a cool card. Full Bore. 1 red mana for an instant. Target creature you control gets +3/+2 until end of turn. If that creature was cast for its warp cost, it also gains trample and haste until end of turn. So 1 mana for +3/+2 is a good trick. That's solid. It's something that's almost playable in a lot of decks, and it's better than usual in this set because the tricks are weak. There's no trick that lets something eat this. But there is a 9-mana 9/9 with Warp 3, and that's 4 mana deal 12 damage with Trample. The extra text, if it was cast for its warp cost, it gets Trample and Haste, is really strong with a few key cards. So a combo card that is a good trick without the combo is powerful on its own. I gave it a 5 average, floor 4, ceiling of 6, and medium effort. Okay, Galvanizing Saw Ship. 5 and a red for an artifact spacecraft. with station. At 3+, it has flying and haste. This is very close to a vehicle. I would hope you have 3 power available by the time you get to turn 6. And a 6 mana 6/5 flying haste is very good. A 6 mana that is not, but it hits hard in the air and is terrifying. It's not hard to station, and it is a station, so even though after it gets 3 counters, you can still station it with red cards, so it's a pretty low risk one. This is a good game ender, even if it's a little fragile by virtue of being an artifact, but you'll get to hit with it before they can do anything about it, and I like that. I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6. It's just the decks that want spacecraft really want spacecraft, and it's so hard to find ones that you're not upset when you have to include them. And I'm not upset if I have to include the Saw Ship. Invasive Maneuvers. 1 in a red for an instant, deals 3 damage to target creature, deals 5 damage instead if you control a spacecraft. So cards like Galvanizing Saw Ship are important for cards like Invasive Maneuvers, and if this only does 3 damage, it's not the worst. It kills 65% of the creatures in the set, and that's enough. But the upside of having a spacecraft, you don't have to have it crude, it doesn't have to be a creature, you just have to have one in play to deal 5 for 2 mana is fantastic. It's an excellent removal spell. So I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, low effort. You can have a spacecraft if you really need one. Have Landseeker. So 3 and a red for a 4/3 creature, Kavu Soldier with Menace. And when this creature enters, create a lander token at the beginning of the end step on your next turn, sacrifice that token. So in order to make this card feel good, you need to play it on turn 4. On turn 5, sacrifice the lander and play a 3-drop. It comes in tap, so you can't pay 6 mana to do it. And 3 toughness is a bit of a liability. A lot of cards will kill 3 toughness, but it does survive the black 2 mana spell, and that might be enough. Because the 4/3 Menace is not a terrible attacker, even if it mostly just trades with 1 creature. You do get to trigger Void, but not until your own end step, and that's tough. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3, ceiling of 6, and high effort. I do think it's to assemble your curve in such a way to get maximum value out of the Landseeker. All right, Caveron Harrier. 1 red for a 2/1 robot soldier artifact creature. Whenever this creature attacks, you may pay 2 colorless. If you do, create a 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token that's tapped and attacking. Sacrifice that token at end of combat. So this one is very aggressive. It attacks for 4 on turn 2, and it keeps attacking for 4, but you really don't want to pay 2 mana in every time. 2 mana for a robot that goes away is a lot. So you don't want to be running this unless you care about sacrificing things during combat or triggering your void. This does enable a lot, but you also have to put work into enabling it because it doesn't attack for free. Your opponent can just block with their 2/3s. You have to want artifacts in play, and you have to want artifacts to sacrifice. It does combo with a few cards, like the 2/4 Insect Warrior. Whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice an artifact or creature to draw a card. It's nice with that, but you have to be enabling this attack, and that's hard work. So overall, I gave the Harrier a 3 average with a floor of 3. I think is usually going to play around there. It's nice in an aggressive deck where you also want to sack things. A ceiling of 5 and high effort. So that's 3, 3, 5, and high. Caveron Skywarden. 4 and a red for a 4/5 with reach at the beginning of your end step. If a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell is warped this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's okay. Like, a 4/5 with reach is okay. Growing to a 5/6 is nice if you can make it happen the turn it comes down. At 6/7 or 7/8, it's going to feel really good, but it's still going to be kind of fragile. Having reach is nice. I haven't seen like a Kabu Lord, but if there is, that would make this a little better. Overall, I gave it a 3 with a floor of 3, ceiling of 5, medium effort. You really need to be triggering it the turn it comes down, and even then, it's still a body. It's a good body though, and I like having access to it in the board, and I like ramping into it. Oh, it is a cool one. 2 and a red for Caveron Turbo Drone. So Caveron Turbo Drone, 2 and a red for a 2/3 artifact creature robot scout. With tap, target creature you control gets +1/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. There's a lot of things that really want haste, including all the warps, and the +1/+1 enables a lot of attacks. That's pretty much it. It's a combo card with warps. You want warps and you want aggressive creatures. This attacks on its own as a solid body, and it enables attacks you wouldn't have otherwise. Haste enablers are something that have a place in this format. Red's cool in this set because the bad cards grind. The bad cards do develop value. I think it's cool. They can also have pretty explosive hits. I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 3, a ceiling of 5, and low effort. It's great with warps. It's great with a lot of specific cards. There's a few rares that is kind of busted with it. I like it. I think this is a very interesting and fun card. There's so many creatures that trigger on attack in red and black too. Like the black sack owls all trigger on attack. I'm really happy if I can give those haste. All right, Litho Breaking. 2 and a red for an instant. Create a lander token. Then you may sacrifice an artifact. When you do, Litho Breaking deals 2 damage to each creature. So this is an instant speed board wipe at 3 mana, and it generates some value. So you can sack the lander token that it makes, or you can sack something else you have lying around. It triggers your void, and it clears the board of all the small things. There's a lot of small things. It clears the drones, it clears the robots, clears the way for so many, so many scary large creatures. Dealing damage to everything at instant speed is significantly better than doing it at sorcery speed, because you get to do it on your opponent's turn and manipulate some attacks. This is a little bit skill intensive to play with, but being able to set up attacks and blocks just right so that Litho Breaking is advantageous to you is going to feel great every time it happens. I gave Litho Breaking a 6 with a floor of a 4, a ceiling of 6, and low effort to get there. Ooh, Melted Moxite. So Moxite is something that they like mine on different planets. I think it's kind of cool. 1 in a red for an artifact. When this artifact enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. And 3, sacrifice this artifact. Create a 2/2. Create a tapped 2/2 colorless robot artifact creature token. So we see these cards a lot. We see discard a card, draw 2 a lot, and it's nice for card selection. They're always better when they stay in play. So Melted Moxite lets you filter your cards early, but then the artifact is relevant. You get to sacrifice it to various things. You get to trigger your void, feed it when you to something that needs it, or you can just trigger void by making a 2/2. 3 mana for a 2/2 isn't great, but it's already done the thing, and then you can sacrifice it again. This is a powerful piece of card draw. You can't have too many copies, really. Anything that does the normal thing, then stay in play, is excellent in this set if it has a relevant type. So I gave it a 5 average with a ceiling of 5 and a floor of 4, low effort. I'll pretty much always play this in a red-blue deck or a red-black deck. I'll often play it in a red-green or red-white deck. Up next, Memorial Team Leader, 3 in a red for a Kavu Soldier for 3. During your turn, other creatures you control get +1/+0, and Warp, 1 in a red. So you get to do a little mini anthem, a little mini Orcish Oriflame and swing out, or you can give it +1/+1 in haste and swing out, and then later play it as another anthem. A 4 mana 4/3 that pumps your other creatures is good enough. The fact that it warps is a nice little bonus, especially with all of the warp and void and haste and nice things to do. It insta stations a spacecraft, which is nice because it's 4 power on its own and it makes everything else station a little better. So I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 7. If you get enough, if you're red-white and you have enough of the token makers, this card becomes your best anthem. This thing's a beast. Molecular Modifier, 2 in a red for a 2/2 Kavu Artificer. I struggle with this word. I've been reading it as Artificer for 20 years and been saying it wrong the whole time. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature you control gets +1/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. Do not underestimate the power of first strike in any format, and this one is no exception. First strike lets you attack. Full stop. If this is alone, it attacks as a 3/2 first striker. That's pretty good. It just enables an attack every single turn, and it does so the turn it comes down. It's going to be demoralizing when your opponent plays a copy or 2 of this. You just won't be able to block at all that game, and you have to kill it. It is a little bit fragile. We've seen this a lot on like 2/4s. Being a 2/2 makes it easier to kill by a lot, but it is a powerful attacker and it goes into every red deck. I gave it a 6 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 6, low effort. You just have to have other creatures with it, other 2-drops especially. Our next card is Nebula Dragon, 6 in a red for a 4/4 flyer. When this creature enters, it deals 3 damage to any target. This is a weak but passable 2-for-1 and finisher. Most decks can pick this up and splash it. It's really easy to splash it in a deck with landers. You can play 2 Nebula Dragons and a mountain and 4 lander tokens in any green deck. That doesn't mean you will, but the option is nice. 4/4 does attack pretty well. 3 damage is likely to kill something. It does the job. It's not great. It's not a red card, it's a landers card. If you have the landers and you don't have a better 7-drop or 6-drop at uncommon or rare, this is still the finisher you can run. It's never going to feel amazing, but it does end the game. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 5. It is a lot of mana, even if it's a good 2-for-1 attacker. Orbital Plunge. So 3 and a red for a sorcery. Orbital Plunge deals 6 damage to target creature. If excess damage was dealt this way, create a lander token. So if that creature has 5 toughness or less, you get a lander. 93% of creatures die to this. 90% of creatures give you a lander. You really do want the lander. I don't like this card without the lander token, but 4 mana to kill a creature, make a lander is great. Even if it doesn't kill quite everything, I'd rather it be a instant speed than sorcery, but it's solid, it does the job. But I gave it a 5 average, a floor of 3, ceiling of 5. I don't think you can play too many of this cards, and I think you want it in their slower red decks. I think this is very good in the slower red decks. In the faster red decks, you want the faster removal spells. But even in the faster decks, you're okay if this is what you curve into. If this is your 4 mana play after you played a 1-drop, a 2-drop, and a 3-drop, you're okay with that. Or Plate Pangolin, 1 in a red for a 2/2 robot pangolin artifact creature. Whenever another artifact you control enters, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's a cost, but you're going to have artifacts, and this will get big fast. You want the cantrip artifacts more than this. This is great in an artifact deck and passable everywhere else. I gave it a 4 average with a floor of 4, ceiling of 6. I want every copy of this in a blue-red artifacts deck. I don't like it as much in the black-red deck or the blue-red deck. A lot of the creatures scale. At 2, 3, and 4, they scale. The creatures that don't are a liability. Your 2-drops have to do something, even if it's just growth. Plasma Bolt. So Plasma Bolt is 1 red mana for a sorcery, deals 2 damage to any target, and deals 3 damage instead if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn or a spell is warped this turn. And I just realized that this is any target, not target creature. There's a lot of things that you need to deal with right away. Being able to deal with them for 1 mana is great. And the Void is not free for when you need this card to be played, but you're going to aim this at face, especially in red-black, or fairly often. I like this card. It kills 43 or 65% of the creatures in the format. Being sorcery speed on a shock brought me down, but then I realized I just assumed it was target creature. We don't usually deal 3 damage to target player for 1 mana. So yeah, being able to, the flexibility on that is great. 3 damage to a player is very relevant. So I gave it a 5 average with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5, low effort. All right, Red Tiger Mechan. You're telling me we get 1 of 5 Voltron pieces? Whatever. 3 in a red for an artifact creature robot cat. 3/3 with haste and warp for 1 in a red. This is a cool one. It attacks for 3 on turn 2. When you warp it, it gets to attack. That's a big deal because it also attacks the turn it comes down. This is a nice solid aggressor in a black red or any red warp deck. You have to want to be aggressive. So I don't want this unless I'm very interested in attacking regularly, but attacking for 3 on the warp is a nice way to trigger Void. I think there's a good red commons Void deck where you just trigger the growth and you need these kinds of warp spells. I don't like this in a lot of decks, but this is a good attacker in an aggressive deck. So 3 average, floor of 3, ceiling of 5. It's only going to be a 5 in very aggressive decks, but I like the card. Remnant Elemental, 1 in a red for an 0/4 elemental with reach and landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, this creature gets +2/+0 until end of turn. A 2 mana 2/4 attacker is pretty good, but the blocking isn't relevant. If you're making enough landers, I'm very happy to have this on offense or defense, because 1 lander means your opponent doesn't get to attack with a single 2/2 flyer at all. Just being a wall whenever you can't attack is nice. I think it's cool. There's enough ways to put a bunch of lands into play at once that it can hit pretty hard. Overall, it's an okay 2-drop, and it's not very aggressive unless you have free landers coming, which you can make happen. I have not included spaceships in flying stats, and that might end up being a mistake, but most of them are like 4 powers, so they're 4/4 flyers on average. A few of them are huge, but this blocks enough, and it's okay to chump block a spacecraft if the game has gotten to that point, because you're less likely to have reliable land drops at that point. So I gave Remnant Elemental a 4 average with a floor of 3, a ceiling of 6, and medium effort. And then I attached a revisit because I might play with this and it'll feel awful, and we'll see. Rig for War, classic combat trick, 1 and a red for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+0 and gains first strike and reach until end of turn. It's a nice set of abilities. This might be better than a 3, but it's difficult to find the time in red. Red wants to do a lot of stuff pre-combat, so it's tough to hold up mana for combat tricks, and it wants to do a lot of things on its turn, and this is a tough thing to leave a creature back to use. So it's a powerful combat trick if you can make it go your way, but it kind of wants you to be defensive, and I don't think you're going to get to do that very often. I think there is going to be an aggressive red combat trick deck that wants to play these cards, and then I'll be pretty happy to play it. But in most decks, it's going to be a 3, so I gave it an average of 3 with a floor of 3 and a ceiling of 4, low effort. Roving Actuator, 3 and a red for a 3/4 artifact creature robot with Void. When this creature enters, if a non-land permanent left the battlefield this turn, or a spell was warped this turn, exile up to 1 target instant or sorcery card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard. Copy it, you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. This is very often going to be a 4 mana 3/4, deal 2 damage to something or deal 3 damage to something, and that's really good. It's not free. You need to have a cheap spell in your graveyard and you need to cast this. The best examples for this are other removal spells. In a black-red deck, I get to play Tragic Trajectory on turn 5, give something -2/2, and then play Roving Actuator, give something -10/10, and you can do a very similar thing with Invasive Maneuvers or Plasma Bolt. You want specifically these kinds of cards, these instants and sorceries, and when you have them and can trigger Void, it's really good. You can also cast other spells if you can trigger Void in other ways, and this is really good in red-black because it can recur. It's also good in red-blue because it can recur. It can recur in red-black or red-blue. It's a solid card, but it is not free to play with. So I gave Roving Actuator a 5 average, floor of 4, ceiling of 7, medium effort. If you have the burn spells or the cheap removal spells, take it. It's going to feel really good. If you can't trigger the Void, this card's very bad, so make sure you can trigger the Void. Ooh, Ruinous Rampage is our next card. 1 red for a sorcery. Choose 1. Ruinous Rampage deals 3 damage to each opponent, or exile all artifacts with mana value 3 or less. Dealing 3 damage to your opponent is not very good unless it's the finishing move. If you're trying to burn your opponent out, if you're an aggressive deck, it'll happen. Exiling all artifacts with mana value 3 or less is usually more likely to hurt you on the red deck than hurt your opponent, but it can hurt your opponent. So I love this as a sideboard card, and I'll play this if my red deck isn't playing a lot of artifacts with mana value 3 or less. That's a difficult thing, but it'll happen. It's more about not hitting your own things. And this is also a really weirdly specific sweeper in a set where one of the better ways to dodge a sweeper is to play stations. So I don't like it. I'm also upset because I play artifacts in standard, and I was really happy that the thing that destroyed all artifacts mana value 3 or less was rotating, and they got a strict upgrade, so I'm mad about it. I gave it a 3 average with a floor of 2, ceiling of 6, high effort. Our next card is Slag Drill Scrapper. 1 red for a 1/2 artifact creature robot scout with 2 and tap. Sacrifice another artifact or land, draw a card. This is way better than it looks. You need artifact sack outlets. This triggers your Void. It's a 1-drop. It's an artifact. You can steal and sack. But just being able to cash in extra lands in the late game is powerful. It's very good. Sacrificing lands does not trigger Void, and that's okay. Just being able to cash in extra lands, especially if you're using landers. If you've been using landers to take lands out of your deck and you're up to 10 lands, Scrapper turns those lands into real cards. It also sacrifices extra creatures, and they can sacrifice each other. This is a good 1-drop. It helps keep you from running out of gas in the late game, and it has relevant types. And it's a 1/2. It's very good. So I give it a 5 average with a floor of 4, ceiling of 5. That's mostly because it's got diminishing returns. I don't want too many copies, but if I'm playing red, I am very happy to play the Scrapper. Even if I'm super aggressive, it's still nice as a 1-drop. I think it's a strong red card. Systems Override. This is the threaten of the set, and it's great. So 2 and a red for a sorcery. Gain control of target artifact or creature until end of turn. Untap that permanent. It gains haste until end of turn. If it's a spacecraft, put 10 charge counters on it. If you do, remove 10 charge counters from it at the beginning of the next end step. There's a lot of good sack effects, even if you're just borrowing a spacecraft. Even within red, you can sacrifice whatever you take. So it's as good as a removal spell in the right deck, or better. It's a removal spell that you also get to hit your opponent with. you don't have to target your opponent's thing. You can target your own spacecraft to turn it on in one turn and then attack. You can just crew your own spacecraft with this if you want. And that's worth it on some of them. Some of them trigger on attack, so especially the rare ones. Being able to surprise station a spacecraft from an empty board will be worth it at least once, and taking your opponent's spacecraft, attacking with it, and then sacking it is pretty nice. It's easier than usual to sacrifice what you grab. This is a strong card in this set. Steal and Sack is a very good archetype in red-black, and you don't have to be black to do it. I gave Systems Override a 5 average. The floor should be 4, a ceiling of 6, and low effort. I love this card. Terrapact Intimidator. I love this mechanic in red. Quick story before we begin. A long time ago, in Judgment, when I started playing, it was decided that red was allowed to do weird things as long as the opponent got to choose. And that's where you have cards like Breaking Point. Just 3 mana, destroy all creatures unless your opponent had to take 6 damage. Burning Inquiry, target player mills 6 cards unless an opponent takes 6 damage. Browbeat, draw 3 cards unless an opponent takes 5 damage. Blazing Salvo, 1 red, deal 3 damage to target creature unless an opponent takes 5 damage. And then later Vexing Devil, 1 mana, 4/3. And any opponent can take 4 damage and you have to sacrifice it. So I love this card. Terrapact Intimidator, 1 in a red for a 2/1 Kavu Scout. When this creature enters, target opponent may have you create 2 lander tokens. If they don't, put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature. So they get to choose, but both options are terrible, and you're left with a 2 mana 2/1. A 2 mana 2/1 make 2 landers is fantastic. It's busted. A 2 mana 4/3 is fantastic. Your opponent has to choose. They do get to choose the better option for them. If they have a deal 3 damage in hand, a removal spell, they're going to put the counters on it. If they are afraid of being aggroed out and don't want you to have just 2 extra landers that turn into lands later, they're going to just let it be big. Some decks, sometimes they won't care about either, but both options are bad for them, making this a pretty strong card. I gave Terrapact Intimidator a 5 with a floor of 5 and a ceiling of 7. It's medium effort required. You have to make both options bad, which means you need to make sure the landers are useful to you and that it's hard for them to kill the 4/3. But a 2 mana 4/3 is great. I love this card. It's one of my favorite red cards. I like this mechanic a lot. Up next is Territorial Bruntar. Earlier I said that every color has its big late game beater and finisher. Territorial Bruntar is reds. It's 4 red for a 6/6 with reach and landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast that card this turn. So you can't usually activate it the turn it comes down. If you can hit a 1-drop, mostly you want to untap with it. And once you untap with it, it's landfall, draw a card. Use a land or draw a card also. It has to be this turn. It's not next end step. It's not until end of turn. So it's only the turn you play it. But a 6 cost, 6/6 reach that has landfall, draw a card is powerful in general. So I gave it a 6 average with a floor of 5, ceiling of 7, medium effort required, and I'll play this anywhere where I don't need to keep my curve extra low. I love this as a payoff for red-green landfall. If you only have lands in library, you will die when you play a land. That's really funny. Okay, Vault Guard Trooper. 4 in a red for a 5/5 creature, Kavu Soldier. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more tapped creatures, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 2 cards. If you have 0 cards in hand and play this, if this draws you 2 cards, it's going to feel amazing. It's so hard to deal with, and it just keeps going from there. 5 cost 5/5 that draws cards is really good in Magic, and you can keep doing it. It's not free, but it's doable. It's a lot easier to do on turn 5 than on turn 3 compared to the other one. And I like this card a lot, especially because you only need 1 of the creatures if you're stationing, or if this is the last creature you need to station a spacecraft and the spacecraft attacks, then it also fills your hand up. It's very good. I gave it a 5 average with floor of 4, ceiling of 6, medium effort. Weftstalker Ardent. 2 in a red for a 2/3 Drix Artificer. Whenever another creature or artifact you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent and has warp for 1 red mana. This deals a lot of damage over the course of the game. The difference between this and the black creature is this one doesn't gain life, but when a creature cares about other creatures coming into play to deal damage, then you're okay playing it on an empty board and playing out all the creatures after it. This will usually be cast you're not going to warp it unless you care about void specifically. 3 cost 2/3 that pings this much is worth it and strong. It goes into more decks than the black equivalent because you can play it before your other creatures. They do go really well together. In some decks this will go crazy, but in a lot of decks it's just going to be a 3 cost 2/3 that pings a few times, and that's fine too. I gave it a 5 overall with a floor of 4 and a ceiling of 6, medium effort. Oh, this also has a 3rd toughness. That's a big deal. Our last card is Zookeeper Mechan. 1 in a red for a 1/3 artifact creature robot, and it says tap, add a red. And then 7, target creature you control gets +4/+0, activate only as a sorcery. I like that red gets mana. I do. I think it's cool. Red can make mana now. I dislike that they get to be strictly better than green. Like, why is this just better than green at making mana? Anyway, it's a really good card. Ramp is great. You do have landers to compete with in this set, but this one works well with landers because 7 mana to give something +4/+0, while not great, will matter. A 2 cost 1/3 mana dork is very good, especially in red. I gave it a 6 average with a floor of 5, ceiling of 6. So that is going to be it for the red cards. We're going to move on to white, and then we're going to talk about the mana efficiency of red versus green. So if that's the kind of content you like and you're watching this on YouTube, come by twitch.tv/ScuffleDeluxe. You can ask this question again or just be here for that kind of conversation. Like in the last set, green got Gabu Gardener, 2 mana 1/3 that taps for mana. This set gets a 2 mana 1/3 artifact creature that taps for mana and has another ability. It's just strictly better. Bothers me. I feel like we should have the Mech Titan core in this set, right? If we're gonna have the Red Tiger Mechan.
Voltron, defender of the universe.
Voltron, defenders of the universe.